Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing all right. It's been a week since I've seen you last time. And so just kind of give you a little update about what's been going on. Last week we had Memorial Day and coming back and trying to prepare to get everything ready. Had a lot of meetings about reopening, restarting different groups here at church. What that means, what that looks like. And so this week are both going to be really busy as we start putting into place all the various pieces that we need to put together as we look to restart worship, given the guidelines that we are receiving from Sheboygan County Public Health Department. So the reopening task force is meeting again this week. On Tuesday, I believe it is. We're going to talk through some things. We've got a walkthrough to run through worship and how that's going to look, and a whole bunch of other things. And so I would imagine that these daily devotions are going to become a little less daily. I'm hoping that I can at least do one or two a week and get some material up to you. And so we may be jumping around a little bit. Various places, since I'm going to continue to do my daily devotion and just share them with you. And so last week as well, I don't know how many of you listened to morning meditations on the radio, but I am going to kind of elaborate on some of those this week. So if you listened last week to the radio, you heard those on the radio. This will be an expanded version of that, some additional thoughts as I put these together for you throughout this week. So with that all being said, with all the craziness, I look forward to seeing you all in the coming weeks. I look forward to being able to connect with you all in the coming weeks. Worship service sign up is open. It is up on our website, stpaulfalls.com. Would encourage you go there, sign up for worship. We are limited to 100 people attendance. You'll see all the regulations, the guidelines, the rules there as well. And so encourage you to take a look at those. Sorry, phone was ringing. Take a look at those as you sign up for worship for hopefully this coming week. For our daily devotion today, we are going to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and we are going to be looking in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and then we're going to go on to Daniel chapter 1 and 2, chapters 1 and 2. As I was reading through 1 Corinthians chapter 5, everything in all of history, past, present, future, everything that has ever happened, everything that will ever happen, it all revolves around one single person. And his name is Jesus. What we have in the Old Testament, it was written to prepare God's people to recognize him when he came. It was getting them ready. It was preparing them to meet the Messiah, the Savior of the world. What we call the New Testament was written to remind God's people of all that he did, of all that he said, of his teachings, to help them remember, to recall all that he did. And between the two, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, we have all that we need to be ready for when he comes again. And at the very heart, at the very center of Jesus' life are the events that we remember as Holy Week. We especially think of his suffering, his death, his resurrection. And when we look back at those pivotal events, the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 tried to help the people in ancient Greek city of Corinth understand how they were supposed to live differently as a result of what God had done for them in Jesus. And at first, those two things, Greek way of living that was often wild, was often seen as out of control, very different, a lot of cultural differences, and this Jewish rabbi, those two don't seem to go together very well. They seem to almost clash even. But Paul goes on. I want to take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Let's take a look at starting at verse 6. Here's what Paul writes. He says, "Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Cleanse out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you really are unleavened. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Let us therefore celebrate the festival, not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." Why does Paul bring up leaven? Why is he talking about a sacrificial lamb? What does it have to do with this Greek way of living and this rabbi? Why these things that don't seem to go together? Why is he bringing this up? And here's why. When Jesus died on the cross, he took upon himself the consequences of all of our actions. He destroyed every stronghold of sin over us. He destroyed it. And he broke open a new way of living for you and me. A way of living that would cause us to live differently than the world around us. Jesus is our Passover lamb because while he was entirely innocent and free from the destructive powers of the devil, the world around us, and even sinful nature that comes from within us, while he was free from all those things, he willingly suffered and died to set us free from those things. And that was Paul's message. That was what he was trying to remind them of, that we have a Savior who encourages us, who challenges us, who helps us to see life differently, who by his action causes us to even change, to not live as the world lives. We're not to go back to our old way of living. Jesus has set us free from those things. As we jump to our Old Testament lessons, we take a look at Daniel chapter 1 and 2. Nothing escapes God. And nothing that happens in all of our world is outside of his control. And we can look at the events over this last weekend and this last week, and it can feel like things are out of control. But in Daniel, we see that God is in control. The prophet Daniel helped us understand this, both by the amazing life that he lived, as well as the prophetic message he was sent to deliver, both to his fellow exiles living in Babylon, right? Daniel is this man who was taken away. He was in the city of Jerusalem. He's now taken away. He's placed down in Babylon. That's where he's meant to live. And all of God's people, a lot of them are hauled off to these different places, and Daniel's writing to them. And so he writes this message to not just the people in Babylon, but to those who are scattered all over, and even to you and me. And just like God had placed Joseph in a position of power and influence in Egypt a long, long time before Daniel was even around, so it happens again. He used Daniel to become an advisor to the kings of Babylon. He was an advisor during the time of Nebuchadnezzar and through Cyrus, the king of Persia. And what was he doing while he was an advisor to the king? He was ensuring that God's people would be safe in the midst of their exile, that they would eventually be able to return to their promised land. And so there's kind of our devotion for today. Once again, as I said, I hope to put these up maybe once or twice a week now as we start moving back to public worship. I know that's not what maybe you'd all like to hear, but unfortunately, as we shift back, my attention also has to shift back to public worship and getting that up and ready to go. But I'm hoping to do these at least once or twice a week for you for a while yet, to get out and to connect with you. And so encourage you to check back often, and I will see you again later this week. All right. God's blessings to you. Hope you have a wonderful day. Once again, if you haven't received the letter from me already, it is up on our website, stpaulfalls.com. You can find the letter about restarting public worship there, as well as sign up for worship services. The 3 services, Thursday at 6:30, Sunday at 8, Sunday at 10. A little different schedule than what we normally run. Gives us time to clean everything up, wipe everything down, gives time for people to leave and come so that we don't have big crowds. We want to try to avoid those things. And I know that, once again, everybody's got various opinions. Everybody's got various ideas. We're trying to take care of everyone's safety and health and still provide them the good news of the gospel. That is our emphasis. That's what is important to us, to the reopening team. It's getting people in the doors to hear the gospel, to receive God's gifts, and keeping people safe. And so we're taking these precautions to do those things. And so would ask that you bear with us for this time, and hopefully we'll continue to see the numbers go down from this pandemic that we've been dealing with for the last, since March. We're now into June. Hopefully those numbers can go down and we can return to somewhat of a new normal, blending what we've done in the past with where we need to go in the future. And so I pray that you'd be patient with us, that we extend a lot of grace and mercy to everyone around us. We're living in a weird time. And so my prayer is for grace and for mercy, for patience. My prayer is that God would relieve this pandemic, and just encourage you to pray for those same things too, not just for our church, but for houses of worship across this country, for peace across this country after what we've seen this last weekend. And those are my prayers today. And so I encourage you to pray for those same things. God's blessings to you. And once again, I will see you hopefully later this week. All right. God bless.